Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for hopping in again. We're nearing the draft. It's tomorrow. So, of course, we're going to try and bring you one of the most informed guests we could possibly have on to preview the draft, kind of talk about what goes on behind the scenes, a guy that's been in that room. But before we do, I do want to give a shout to our partners at betonline.ag. Head over there today. We know the online casino is always open. They've got unbelievable sharps out there. They're going to play it early. The sign-up bonuses are great. Whether you're down with, basketball, racing, golf, it doesn't matter. They've got everything there. So head over and sign up at betonline.ag today and tell them that Jboy sent you. But very excited, as usual, to bring on our guest, former GM of the New York Jets, ESPN NFL, a front office insider, a guy that understands how this process works, really what's going into it, and going to try and preview what we're going to see tomorrow in the 2021 NFL draft. That's Mr. Mike Tannenbaum. Mike, I really appreciate you coming on, brother.
Great to be with you. How's everything?
Man, it's going great. The craziness leading up to the draft, everybody, with their mock drafts and their predictions, and this team is supposed to do this, and this one's supposed to do another one. I want to ask you, how much is a lot of the news that comes out before? We know there's some accuracy to it, but how much is it really just positioning, or maybe almost like in a wartime, putting out some false information to maybe keep the other teams off guard? How much is posturing?
Well, I think, my when I was on the team side, I always wanted to be, professionally courteous, get back to, as many people within reason as I could. And, you want to share information to the extent that it's general league information. No one's going to go out there and give out, what their board is. And I don't think anybody in the media expects that. So, yeah, I think there's this sort of like polite dance that's played between teams and the media. And about 60 to 70% of it may be accurate.
Yeah, no, and it's really interesting because, again, we see headlines and this team's going to trade up and this team's going to move this guy on the block to get this guy. And it's fascinating. And that's what keeps, obviously, eyes on the screen. But, Mike, when you were a GM, just behind the scenes of the draft, I know there's some things you could say and things you can't say, but this isn't something that you figure out a month before. This has been in the works. The amount of scouting and money that goes into finding out about these players, not only how they are on the field, how they treated the cafeteria lady in 5th grade, all the way back. Can you just talk about how much of a process it is to get to the point where you hear the commissioner read the pick and just how much goes on behind the scenes? And because we know it's a lot, but it's absolutely unbelievable what really goes on.
Yeah, there's a great expression, the victories in the struggle. And it's about an 11-month process. And, it's interesting. You just kind of throw out there, well, how they treat the cafeteria lady in the 5th grade. And what's interesting for me is I lived that. So in 2016, we had a really good left tackle, Brandon Albert. I was the executive vice president of the Dolphins. And the number one player on our board was Laramie Tunsil. And we had a gazillion needs like every other team. And something happened with Laramie shortly before the draft. Something came out, and there he was, the first pick in the draft, number one guy on the board. There we took him at 13. And the reason we did it is we had great reports on him in the fall. He's a great kid. He made a mistake, and we felt like it was a great opportunity for us at the Dolphins at the time.
Yeah, and again, it's something where you hear about all the faults of some of these guys, and it gets blasted in the media, and you really don't have the full picture of who they are, how they treat people. But you guys are privy to that. And as we're looking to this draft, there's some anomalies. You look at the amount of SEC wide receivers that people are that are saying may go in the first round, as many as 5. But before we get there, a lot of the talk, and it always is around this time, is about the quarterbacks. And when you watch just from your trained eye, when you see Zach Wilson, when you see Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, number one, is Trevor Lawrence a clear number one to you? And who would you put in that second spot, not second tier, but because that's where the conversation is going, Trey Lance as well from North Dakota State?
Yeah, I would take Trevor Lawrence number one. He reminds me a lot of Andrew Luck. And I think he has a chance to be a really special player, can make all the throws. I think his athleticism is somewhat taken for granted, a little bit like a year ago when we were talking about Justin Herbert. I think Lawrence's athleticism is a little bit better than people realize. I think he's a great fit for what Urban likes to do. Urban Meyer, the head coach of the Jaguars, likes an athletic quarterback, a guy that can make plays with his feet. So I think it's a really good fit on a number of levels for Jacksonville.
Yeah, who would you say when you look outside of Trevor it's, I say it's a foregone conclusion that the Jags are going to take Trevor Lawrence. But, there's been a talk about Justin Fields in the system he plays in, and Zach Wilson in the system he plays in, and Trey Lance in the system he plays in. When you watch their games, who would you put ahead in that group, or do you think it's kind of just depending on what you're looking for?
Yeah, for me, it's Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Lance, and Fields. Now, with that said, I happen to like Justin Fields a lot. Just thought there was a couple of games, Indiana Northwestern, where he didn't play very well. I thought the defenses made it move around a little bit quicker than he wanted to. And in the Clemson game, what's interesting, he played great. It's almost like paying a Ryan Day tax. Like, guys were so open. Now, here's what's so hard about scouting, though, is, so you say, like, those were not great games for him or great moments, which are true. But then you look on the other hand, and Trey Lance played one game this year. So but I happen to like Trey Lance a lot. I think he's a really intriguing prospect.
Yeah, Mac Jones has been a big topic of conversation. The 49ers talking about drafting him at number 3 and having him replace Jimmy Garoppolo. What is it about Mac Jones do you like? Do you have some reservations about him as well? Because, again, you're playing with superstars, and guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle are guys that were at least superstars in college. But you do got to make the throws. He did have great protection. But is it his demeanor along with his game that's really elevated him up? Because I know he's very meticulous, and he's a guy that really knows how to dot his I's and cross his T's.
Yeah, I fell in love with him in Mobile. I was there all week, and he ironically, I said it in January, and I think it's kind of played out to be true, which is he really reminds me of a slightly more athletic Matt Ryan. Very accurate, good anticipation. He's a better athlete than you think he is, and the reason that's ironic is, as we all know, San Francisco made this massive trade up, and when you think about the success Kyle Shanahan, the 49er head coach, he was in the Super Bowl with Matt Ryan just a couple of years ago. So I'm sure that's how Kyle Shanahan sees it. And I think Mac Jones actually played better this year with less weapons than Tua did a year ago. And Tua was the 5th pick a year ago.
Yeah, and when I watch Mac in the pocket, he's one of the best, if not the best in the country, in my opinion, at manipulating the pocket, moving in the pocket, moving up, keeping his eyes downfield, and extending plays in his way. I do agree with you. I think his athleticism is a little bit underrated, but his ability to move in the pocket and really structure himself to make throws, to be able to get rid of the ball and not take a sack even if it's thrown away, really kind of separates him. But everybody talks about the quarterbacks, and that's something we'll continue to follow. But is this wide receiver class, especially in the SEC, I mean, is this one of the deepest wide receiver classes you've ever seen in the NFL draft?
Yeah, I mean, you could just go to Alabama and, wow, you're taking their best guy, and we'll probably be talking about guys like John Mechie, next year. Those two guys are really special. Both Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, I think, have a chance to be really good pros. Terrence Marshall was maybe the most highly recruited player of all of them, and he's going to go maybe at the bottom first, top of the second. Really like Jamar Chase a lot, great body control. And then, of course, Kadarius Toney out of Mobile, Alabama, played at Florida. To me, he's a really interesting player. He's very smart. He plays a lot of different positions. He's going to gain the ball behind the line of scrimmage. So I think those 5 SEC receivers could go in the first round.
Yeah, and one that I think, because we talk about Waddle and we talk about these other guys, but Elijah Moore, the kid coming out of Ole Miss. I know size is a little bit of a deal with him, but just watching him instinctively on the field, he's a natural route runner. He's unbelievably fast. He just has that it factor with the ball in his hands. Do you think he's a guy that could slip in the late first round? Maybe, and I don't mean slip in a bad way. I mean, kind of come up out of nowhere in the late first, maybe early second. Yeah,
I think he's a 25 to 40 player. And he's right from very close to where I am in South Florida. Very good athlete, good hands. I think he's one of those players, when you draft him, he's going to come in. I think he's a what you see is what you get guy. And I think he'll be a very productive receiver. If we're talking next year and he has 65 catches in year 1, that would not surprise me.
Yeah, me either. I think he's a guy you could use all around the field. I just wonder what the Chiefs could do with a guy like him. I know they got Tyreek and the way they're able to use those fast guys to get into open space. But also, we talk about Chase and all these guys, Kyle Pitts. And some people call him a tight end. Some people say he's a flex Y. He can do it all. Even it's amazing. I've never seen a guy run that fast running sideways at 6'6" and still ran the 40 time that he did. But is Kyle Pitts, and a lot of people are saying the Falcons are going to take him at number 4. And he's about as talented a prospect as I can see coming out at that position, especially in today's NFL game when the tight end can do so much. And with the way they are formationally, being able to flex him out and do those things as well to get him in open space. What are your thoughts on Kyle Pitts? And would the Falcons be smart in taking him with that 4th pick? I know Julio isn't out of the farm yet. He's not washed up or anything like that. But, man, that's a weapon to give Matt Ryan because obviously you believe in Matt Ryan.
So I have the privilege every week of running a phone call called the 33rd team. And
yep.
Last week we had 9 head coaches, 6 former GMs, 2 club presidents. And I asked a very question to Wade Phillips and Eric Mangini about how would you defend Kyle Pitts? And what's interesting is I think he's going to be dynamic. He's going to have to block a little bit. And here's what I mean by that. Even if it's cutting off on the backside, he's not going to move people in short yards and goal line. That's not who he is. He's not Rob Gronkowski. He's going to be defended as a wide receiver. We could call him whatever he wants. It's a little bit like Evan Ingram. It says in the program he's a tight end, but Evan Ingram plays like a tight receiver.
Yeah.
And so does Kyle Pitts. But Pitts will be a point scorer. He's fast. Huge catch radius. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I expect him to go forward to Atlanta.
Yeah, I think they'd be smart to get him. I mean, you pair him with Julio if they don't end up trading Julio, depending on if you listen to the rumors. But real quick, I do want to give a shout to our partners at monsterbass.com. Use the promo code JBOY10, that's JBOY10, and you save 15% off your first order. It's a subscription fishing service. So wherever you are, let them know your location, what you're fishing for, bass, crappie, Loch Ness Monster, it doesn't matter. They're going to have bait, tackle, lures, jigs, everything you need, and they'll send it right to your door. That's monsterbass.com. Use that promo code JBOY10. Here with a former GM of the New York Jets, heard about his time with the Dolphins. You can catch him. We're going to talk about the 33rd team. It's great stuff. You mentioned some of the guests that you've had on there. I want to dig into that a little bit later. And he's the NFL front office insider for ESPN, Mr. Mike Tannenbaum. And, Mike, to kind of switch gears a little bit, when you're looking at the way the SEC, you can pretty much say dominated the draft. Is it getting to a point where some NFL teams, and again, this may not be, you're trying to find the best players out there, there's players all over the place, but are some NFL teams more geared toward taking SEC players? And how much of a notch is that in your corner playing in the SEC when it really comes down to it?
Yes, and yes.
I thought you may say that.
I've made these decisions for a living for a long time. I don't know how it can. The bottom line is you want good players coming from good schools against the best competition. I remember, and this is ironically about a non-SEC player, but a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson was coming out, I remember Coach Saban saying, look, Deshaun Watson is a guy we can't defend. We have all these players on defense that are going to play on Sundays. Mm-hmm. And there's so much wisdom in the simplicity of that comment, which is if you're a good player in the SEC, you're going against the best in practice. And that's what's so hard about things. Like, you were asking me earlier about Justin Fields and Trey Lance. It's hard to normalize, Trey Lance, who's playing at the FCS level against, players in the Big Ten. But when you get to the SEC, that is truly big boy football, and it's competitive. And if you could go through Coach Saban's program, I mean, there's no NFL program that you can't succeed in.
Yeah, and to me, it's got to be a much harder evaluation looking at the lower division guys because of what you said of the competition. And that's the thing about that. See, you can't hide. You can't hide at practice. You can't hide during the game. Wherever you're going, there's somebody really talented. And when you're looking at systems, as we wind down here, Mike, when you're looking at systems, we have a ton of different type of offenses. I mean, you look at what Josh Heupel's doing at Tennessee compared to what they did at Kentucky last year. You can get different ends of the spectrum. But how much, because everybody talks about, this guy's a fit, this guy's a fit, this guy's a fit. How much of it is looking at the board and saying, all right, look, 10 to 15% of these guys or 10% of these guys are guys that we're going to take because they're unbelievable players and we can fit our system around them. And then how much is you saying, well, we're not taking this guy if he doesn't fit exactly what we do? For example, for some reason, if you didn't, if you were an offense that didn't really use a guy like Kyle Pitts a lot, would you still take him just because he's that talented? How much does that elite talent preface the system, to put it more simply?
Yeah, that's a question for the ages. And you really want to take the best player you can within reason. Mm-hmm. You need the draft to fill needs. So you do the best you can. It's hard to pass on Kyle Pitts. If you don't have a system to make Kyle Pitts successful, I would question the system you're running.
No doubt. And maybe Kyle was a bad example. It's probably better really for linemen, I would guess, especially 3 down, 4 down in the NFL, depending on what you're playing. But, Mike, too, before we get to the 33rd team, because it's really cool stuff you've got going on over there. When you look at the draft this year, is there a guy that you consider a sleeper that may not go in the first round that you think has a chance to make an impact? Just one, and then maybe one guy that you think isn't as highly isn't going to be as highly valuable as what they're projected to be. Do you have one of each? Is there some kind of in your mind?
Yeah, along the BC tight end, I like him. I think he's going to be a really rock solid player, like someone in the mold of like Jonnu Smith. Like he's nowhere near the athlete that Kyle Pitts is, but I think he'll be really smooth and steady. I think Trey McKinney from Georgia, boy, he played at the Senior Bowl. He looked great. I hope he takes the next step because he is a big guy that can move. He looks a little bit like Rob Gronkowski. I'm not saying he plays that way. So those are a couple of tight ends, I think, a little bit under the radar. And then, going the other way, durability becomes an issue. So there's a couple players like a Caleb Farley. Like, I don't really know what to do there because if we had one game and we had to go win a Super Bowl and we needed somebody that had elite man-to-man skills, like you could say he's the best. But he hasn't really been available, and that's a problem.
Yeah, no, and it's always with drafts. I mean, there's guys that are overprojected, guys that are underprojected. That's what makes it fun to kind of look back a couple of years later, a handful of years later, and see who's really there. But, Mike, I can't let you go without talking about the 33rd team. You kind of mentioned it earlier. I mean, the guests you've had on there have been incredible. Can you let our audience, number one, know some of the guests you've had on there, the content, and then where they can find it?
Yeah, so it's the 33rdteam.com. And really all it is, it's a think tank. So we have over the last year and a half, just countless head coaches, guys like Dan Quinn, that they leave the Falcons, they come to us, they stay current on what's going on. And then, he's now the defense coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. We have a couple of dozen grad students that are really smart. A couple of them have left us and gotten entry-level jobs in scouting. And we get together once a week for invite-only Zoom calls, and our grad students do almost all the work in terms of prepping. And then we get world-class experts like Eric Mangini, Mark Trestman, Wade Phillips, Joe Banner. I mean, there's a host of people, and we just look to get better and smarter. And we just put out free content that hopefully, if you love college football or pro football, you would enjoy. So it's the 33rdteam.com.
Definitely, and I really challenge all of our audience to go check that out. A football think tank. Mike, that sounds like heaven to me, man. I could get lost up there. Just give me a sleeping bag, a whiteboard, and a marker, and we'll go to work. But I really appreciate you coming on, man. I know you're super busy, especially this time of year. I really do appreciate it. Also, tell everybody where they can follow you on social media as well. Yeah, I appreciate it. At Real Tannenbaum. And I appreciate you having me. It's a really fun time of year if you like football. Oh, definitely. We know it's year round, but it really starts getting cooking this year, and then it'll lead us on up to the season. But appreciate you, Mike. Be safe out there. Appreciate you guys as well. Make sure you subscribe to the Jboy Show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to thejboyshow.com. Get some of that merch. The gray hoodies are selling like hotcakes, so you better get in there. If they are sold out, we're going to order more. It's been another edition, a draft edition of the Jboy Show. The Jboy's gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.